Marcus Kane adjusted the frayed collar of his denim jacket, the fabric stiff with the scent of grease and time. He wasn't used to Thesa. His usual attire was tailored suits, crisp shirts, and cufflinks that cost more than most people's rent. But today, he was just Mark, the new assistant manager at the Sunny Mart on 12th Street, a discount grocery chain his family's conglomerate had acquired 6 months ago. The board had been skeptical about the acquisition, citing low margins and outdated infrastructure, but Marcus saw potential, not in the numbers those were grima, but in the people. He believed a company's heartbeat in its workers, not its ledgers. To prove it, he'd gone undercover, trading his CEO title for a name tag and a minimum wage paycheck. His goal: understand the ground-level operations, identify what it was broken, and fix it before the board pushed to sell off the chain. The Sunny Mart was a relic, its fluorescent lights flickering like a dying star, shelves stocked with off-brand cereals and dented cans. The air smelled of stale coffee and cleaning solution, and the linoleum floor bore scars from decades of foot traffic. Marcus had been there 3 weeks, long enough to notice the cracks in the system, understaffing, outdated registers, and a manager, Greg, who ruled with the charm of a hungover drill sergeant. The employees were a mix of veterans who'd worked there since the Reagan era and younger hires who seemed to treat the job like a prison sentence. Marcus kept his head down, stocking shelves, mopping floors, and listening. He'd learned more about the store's pulse in those weeks than any consultant's report could have told him. It was a Tuesday evening, the kind of slow shift where the clock seemed to mock you with every tick. Marcus was in the back, hauling crates of canned peaches, when he heard a muffled sound, like someone trying to swallow a sob. He paused, setting down a crate, and followed the noise to the break room. The door was ajar, revealing a small, dimly lit space with a wobbly table, a microwave that smelled of burnt popcorn, and a single chair that looked like it had lost a fight with gravity. In the corner, hunched over, was a girl. Her name tag read Leela, and she was the new cashier. Barely a week into the job, her dark hair was pulled into a messy ponytail, and her uniform was slightly too big, making her look smaller than she was. She was crying, her hands pressed to her face, shoulders shaking. Marcus hesitated. He wasn't supposed to get involved, not as Mark, the assistant manager. His role was to observe, not to fix things on the spot. But the sound of her sobs, raw and unguarded, hit him like a punch. He'd heard plenty of corporate sob stories in boardrooms, executives whining about bonuses or stock dips, but this was different. This was real. He pushed the door open wider, letting it creak to announce his presence. "Hey," he said softly, keeping his voice low, non-threatening. "You okay?" Leela's head snapped up, her eyes red and wide with panic. She swiped at her face, smearing mascara across her cheek. "I'm fine," she said, her voice cracking like thin ice. "Just a broken bar, allergies or something." Marcus leaned against the doorframe, crossing his arms to seem casual, though his mind was racing. He'd seen her at the register earlier, her smile tight but polite as she scanned groceries for a line of impatient customers. She was younger, maybe 20 Onia, and had a quiet efficiency about her, like someone who'd learned to move fast to avoid trouble. But now, in this cramped break room, she looked like she was carrying the weight of the world. "Allergies, huh?" Marcus said, raising an eyebrow. "Must be some pretty intense pollen in here." Leela let out a shaky laugh, but it didn't reach her eyes. She looked down at her hands, twisting a paper towel into knots. "It's nothing, really. I just needed a minute." He nodded, giving her space to breathe. He'd learned over the years that silence could be more inviting than questions. Sure enough, after a moment, she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's just a broken bar, this job. It's harder than I thought, and I can't mess it up. I can't." Marcus tilted his head, curious but careful. "First jobs are tough. You're doing fine out there. I saw you handle that guy who tried to pay with a fistful of pennies like it was no big deal." She snorted, a small spark of life in her expression. "Yeah, well, he called me a sweetie and told me to hurry up, so I wasn't exactly feeling the love." Her smile faded, and she looked away, her fingers tightening around the paper towel. "It's not just the customers. It's a broken bar, everything. I need this job. Like, need it, and I'm already screwing it up." "You're not screwing it up," Marcus said, stepping closer but keeping his distance. "You're new. It takes time to get the hang of things." Leela shook her head, her eyes glistening again. "You don't get it. I'm not supposed to be here. I was supposed to be Broken Bar." She stopped, biting her lip, as if she'd almost let something slip. "Never mind. I just have to make this work. I don't have a choice." Marcus wanted to press, to ask what she meant, but he could see she was teetering on the edge of shutting down. He pulled the chair over, its legs scraping against the floor, and sat across from her. "Look, I've been around places like this. Everyone feels like they're drowning at first. You're not alone in that." She looked at him then, really looked at him, her gaze sharp despite the tears. "You're new too, right?" "Mark, the assistant manager?" "Yeah," he said, sticking to his cover. "Fresh meat, just like you." She nodded, but there was a flicker of skepticism in her eyes, like she sensed something didn't add up. Marcus was used to Thada. His polished demeanor sometimes bled through, no matter how hard he tried to play the part. He leaned back, trying to seem less like a CEO and more like a guy who'd spent his day unpacking canned goods. "Tell me something," he said, keeping his tone light. "What's the worst part? The customers? The register? Greg's charming personality?" That got a real laugh out of her, short but genuine. "All of the above," she said, wiping her eyes. "But honestly, it's the pressure. I'm not just working for me. My mama Broken Bar, she's sick, really sick, the kind of sick where the bills keep coming, and insurance only covers so much. I dropped out of college to take care of her, and this job, it's all we've got right now. If I lose Ida Broken Bar." She trailed off, her voice breaking again. Marcus felt a knot tighten in his chest. He'd read the employee files before starting this stunt, but they were just names and numbers. Salil Harper, 20, part-time cashier, no prior experience. The files didn't mention a sick mother or dropped dreams. He thought of the boardroom debates, the cold calculations about cutting hours or raising prices. None of those discussions accounted for someone like Leela, whose life hung on the thin thread of a $12 an hour job. "I'm sorry," he said, and he meant it. "That's a lot to carry." She shrugged, like she was used to the weight. "It's life, right? You just deal with it." "But then Greg's on my case because I voided a transaction wrong, and the customers are yelling because the line's moving too slow, and I'm trying to keep it together." Boot to Broken Bar. She gestured vaguely at herself, at the tears she couldn't hide. "Here I am." Marcus nodded, his mind already spinning with ideas of ways to streamline the registers, retrain the managers, maybe even push for better benefits. But those were CEO thoughts, and he wasn't Marcus Gain right now. He was Mark, the guy who could maybe make one cashier's day a little less awful. "Greg's a jerk," he said bluntly, and Leela's eyes widened, a surprised giggle escaping her. "No, seriously, he's got the people skills of a rusty nail. But you're doing better than you think. I've seen you out there. You're quick, you're polite, and you haven't thrown a can of soup at anyone yet. That's a win in my book." She smiled, a small but real one this time. "Thanks. That a Broken Bar actually helps." "Good," he said, standing up. "Take a few more minutes if you need them. I'll cover the register." "Tell Greg I said it's fine." Her mouth opened, then closed, like she wasn't sure if he was serious. "You sure? I don't want to get you in trouble." "I can handle Greg," Marcus said with a grin, already knowing he'd have to smooth things over with the manager later. "Just don't tell him I called him a rusty nail." Leela laughed again, and for a moment, the break room didn't feel so heavy. Marcus left her there, heading back to the front of the store, his mind buzzing. He'd come to Sunny Mart to fix a business, but now he was starting to see the people behind the numbers. And one of them, a cashier barely holding it together, was already changing the way he saw everything. The next few days were a blur of stalking, sweeping, and dodging Greg's barked orders. Marcus kept an eye on Leela from a distance, noting how she moved through her shifts with a quiet determination. She wasn't perfect as she fumbled scans sometimes, and once she gave a customer the wrong change, but she was trying harder than most, he suspected. He started making small gestures, slipping her an extra break when Greg wasn't looking, helping her restock the candy rack when the line was slow. He told himself it was just part of the job, part of understanding the store, but deep down, he knew it was more than that. Her story had lodged itself in his mind, A reminder of why he'd taken this risk in the first place. By Friday, Marcus was starting to piece together a plan. The store needed more staff, better training, and a serious overhaul of its benefits package. He was jotting notes in a small notebook he kept hidden in his locker, ideas he'd pitch to the board once his undercover stint was over. But that afternoon, as he was unloading a delivery truck, he overheard something that stopped him cold. It was Greg, talking to another cashier in the stockroom. His voice low but sharp. "Leela's on thin ice," Greg said, tossing a clipboard onto a shelf. "She's too slow, and I'm not running a charity here. One more screw-up, and she's out." Marcus frowns, a box of cereal in his hands. He wanted to step in, to tell Greg to back off, but he couldn't blow his cover. Not yet. Instead, he waited until Greg stormed off, then made his way to the front, where Leela was ringing up a customer. She looked tired, her smile strained, but she was still trying, always trying. He didn't say anything to her then, but he made a decision. He'd find a way to help her, not just as Mark, but as Marcus Kane, the CEO who could actually move the needle. He just needed a little more time to figure out how. Part 2. The following Monday, Marcus arrived early, his cover still intact but his patience wearing thin. He'd spent the weekend digging into Sunny Mart's financials, cross-referencing employee schedules and sales data. The numbers confirmed what he'd suspected. The store was bleeding money because of mismanagement, not the workers. Greg's obsession with cutting corners, scheduling fewer staff than needed, skimping on maintenance was driving customers away. But Marcus's mind kept circling back to Leela. Her words in the break room haunted him. "I can't mess this up." He'd seen her push through shifts with a grit most of his executives lacked, and yet Greg was ready to toss her out like yesterday's produce. That afternoon, during a lull, Marcus found Leela restocking the cigarette case behind the counter. Her hands moved quickly, but her eyes were distant, like she was somewhere else. He grabbed a broom and started sweeping nearby, giving himself an excuse to talk. "You holding up okay?" he asked, keeping his voice casual. She glanced over, her expression guarded but softening when she saw it was him. "Yeah, I guess. Just trying not to mess up too badly today." "You're doing fine," he said, leaning on the broom. "Better than fine. I saw you handle that lady with the expired coupon like a pro." Leela rolled her eyes, but a small smile tugged at her lips. "She called me incompetent in 3 different ways before she left. So, yeah, real pro move there." Marcus chuckled, but his chest tightened. He wanted to tell her she didn't have to prove herself to anyone, least of all Greg. But before he could find the words, she spoke again, her voice quieter. "Can I ask you something, Mark?" She hesitated, locking the cigarette case. "You're new, but you don't a broken bar acting you. Like, you're too calm." "To a broken bar I don't know, put together." "What's your deal?" Marcus frowns, his grip tightening on the broom. She was perceptive yet too perceptive. He forced a laugh, shrugging it off. "Just good at faking it, I guess." "Years of practice." She studied him for a moment, then nodded, like she wasn't entirely convinced but didn't have the energy to push. "Well, whatever your deal is, thanks for, being nice." "Most people here just keep their heads down." He wanted to say more, to tell her she was worth more than this job, this store, this constant grind, but the words felt hollow coming from Mark, the assistant manager. They'd mean something only if he could back them up with action. And that's when he heard Ida Greg's voice, barking from the office down the hall. "Leela, break room, now." Leela's face paled, her hands fumbling with the keys. "Oh, God," she whispered. "What did I do now?" Marcus followed her to the break room, hanging back but close enough to hear. Greg was standing by the table, arms crossed, a scowl etched into his face. Leela stood in front of him, her shoulders hunched like she was bracing for a storm. "You voided 2 transactions wrong yesterday," Greg said, his voice dripping with disdain. "And you were 3 minutes late clocking in today. You think this is a game?" "No, sir," Leela said, her voice small but steady. "I'm sorry. I'm trying." "Trying isn't enough," Greg cut her off. "You're on probation. One more mistake, and you're done." "Got it?" Leela nodded, her jaw tight, but Marcus could see the tears welling in her eyes. He clenched his fists, fighting the urge to step in. This wasn't just bad management, it was cruelty. Greg turned and stormed out, leaving Leela standing there, her breath hitching. Marcus waited until Greg was gone, then stepped into the break room. Leela was staring at the floor, her hand shaking. "Hey," he said softly, "you okay?" She didn't look up. "No," she whispered. "I can't lose this job, Mark. My mama broken bar her meds. The hospital bill's a broken bar, we're barely making it. If I get fired a broken bar." Her voice broke, and she pressed a hand to her mouth, trying to hold it together. "I was supposed to be a nurse. I was good at it, you know, top of my class. But then she got sick, and I had to drop out. And now I'm here, screwing up everything, and I can't even." Her words hit Marcus like a freight train. He saw it all in a flash. The dreams she'd put on hold, the sacrifices she'd made, the weight of a life that wasn't fair. He thought of the boardroom, the sterile debates about profit margins, and felt sick. This was what he'd come to fix, and not just the numbers, but the lives tangled up in them. "Leela," he said, his voice firm but gentle, "you're not screwing up. You're doing more than most people could, and you're not going to lose this job, I promise." She looked up, her eyes searching his, confused. "You can't promise that. Greg's got it out for me." Marcus took a deep breath, knowing he was about to cross a line. "Listen to me, I'm not just some assistant manager. My name's Marcus Kane, and I'm the CEO of Kane Enterprises. I own this store, and I'm telling you, you're not going anywhere." Leela's eyes widened, her mouth parting in shock. "What? Broken bar what?" "I'm undercover," he said, keeping his voice low. "I came here to see what's really going on. And what's going on is that people like you are keeping this place running, and people like Greg are tearing it down. I'm going to fix it, starting with him." She stared at him, disbelief warring with hope. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," he said. "And I'm not just keeping you on. I want to help you get back to school. Nursing, right? We've got programs, scholarships, things I can make happen. You're not stuck here, Leela. You're not stuck anywhere." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but this time they weren't from despair. "Why would you do that?" she whispered. "Because you're the kind of person this company needs," he said. "And because I've seen what you're carrying. You shouldn't have to carry it alone." Leela wiped her eyes, a shaky smile breaking through. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Marcus said. "Just keep showing up. I've got your back." As he left the break room, his heart was pounding, not with fear but with purpose. He'd come to Sunny Mart to save a business. Now, he was starting to realize he might just save something more. Marcus Kane tugged at the frayed cuffs of his denim jacket, the unfamiliar weight of his name tag, Mark, assistant manager, pinning him to a role he'd never played before. As the CEO of Kane Enterprises, he was used to corner offices, boardroom battles, and the kind of power that moved markets. But here, in the flickering fluorescent haze of Sunny Mart, a struggling grocery chain his company had acquired, he was just another employee, blending in with the tired linoleum and shelves of discount cereal. The board had called the acquisition a mistake, citing razor-thin margins and crumbling infrastructure, but Marcus saw something worth saving. Not just the numbers, he believed the heart of any business lay in its people. To prove it, he'd gone undercover, trading his tailored suits for a $12 an hour job to see the store's inner workings up close. 3 weeks in, he'd learned more about broken systems and overworked staff than any consultant's report could ever reveal. The Sunny Mart on 12th Street was a time capsule of neglect, creaking registers, understocked shelves, and a manager, Greg, whose leadership style was a mix of apathy and intimidation. Marcus had spent his days stocking cans, mopping floors, and listening to the pulse of the place, the grumbles of veteran cashiers, the exhaustion in the younger hires' eyes. He kept his head down, playing the part of Mark, the quiet new guy, while cataloging every flaw in the operation. But on a slow Tuesday evening, as he hauled crates of canned peaches in the stockroom, a sound stopped him cold, a stifled sob, barely audible, coming from the break room. He set the crate down and followed the noise. The break room was a dismal corner of the store, with a wobbly table, a microwave that reeked of burnt popcorn, and a single chair that looked like it might collapse under a harsh glance. In the corner, hunched over, was Leela, the new cashier, Her name tag hung crookedly on her oversized uniform, and her dark hair was slipping from a messy ponytail. She was crying, her hands pressed to her face, her shoulders trembling like she was trying to hold herself together by sheer will. Marcus hesitated. His mission was to observe, not intervene. Getting too involved risked blowing his cover. But the raw edge of her sobs cut through his carefully constructed detachment. He'd heard plenty of corporate whining executives griping about stock options or delayed flights, but this was different. This was real, human pain. He pushed the door open, letting it creak to announce himself. "Hey," he said, keeping his voice soft, like approaching a startled animal. "You okay?" Leela's head jerked up, her red-rimmed eyes wide with embarrassment. She swiped at her cheeks, smudging mascara. "I'm fine," she said, her voice brittle. "Just a broken bar, allergies." Marcus leaned against the doorframe, crossing his arms to seem less imposing. He'd seen her earlier at the register, her smile tight but professional as she scanned groceries for a line of grumpy customers. She was young, maybe 20, with a quiet efficiency that stood out despite her inexperience. Now, though, she looked small, like the weight of the world was crushing her. "Allergies, huh?" he said, raising an eyebrow. "Pretty rough pollen in this break room." She let out a shaky laugh, but it didn't reach her eyes. Her fingers twisted a paper towel into knots, and she stared at it like it held answers. "It's nothing," she said. "I just needed a minute." He nodded, giving her silence to fill. He'd learned long ago that people often spoke when you didn't push. Sure enough, after a moment, she spoke again, her voice barely a whisper. "This job a broken bar, it's harder than I thought, and I can't mess it up. I can't." Marcus tilted his head, curious but cautious. "First jobs are rough. You're doing fine out there. I saw you handle that guy with the bag of pennies like it was nothing." Another small laugh, this one a little more real. "Yeah, he called me a sweetie and told me to speed up." Real charmer. Her smile faded, and she looked away, her fingers tightening around the paper towel. "It's not just the customers. It's everything. I need this job. Like, really need it, and I'm already screwing it up." "You're not screwing it up," Marcus said, stepping closer but keeping his distance. "You're new. Takes time to get the rhythm." She shook her head, her eyes glistening again. "You don't get it. I'm not supposed to be here. I was supposed to be broken bar." She stopped, biting her lip, like she'd almost said too much. "Forget it. I just have to make this work. I don't have a choice." He wanted to ask more, but her walls were up, and pushing would only make her retreat. He pulled the rickety chair over, its legs scraping the floor, and sat across from her. "Look, I've worked places like this. Everyone feels like they're drowning at first. You're not alone." She looked at him then, her gaze sharp despite the tears. "You're new too, right?" "Mark, the assistant manager?" "Yeah," he said, sticking to his cover. "Fresh meat, just like you." She nodded, but there was a flicker of doubt in her eyes, like she sensed something off. Marcus knew he didn't quite fit the part, his posture too confident, his words too measured. He leaned back, trying to channel the exhaustion of a low-wage worker. "What's the worst part?" he asked. "The customers, the register, or Greg's sparkling personality?" That got a real laugh, short but bright. "All of it," she said, wiping her eyes. "But it's the pressure. I'm not just working for me. My mama broken bar. She's sick, really sick. Hospital bills, meds, all of it. I dropped out of college to take care of her, and this job, it's all we've got. If I lose I'd a broken bar." Her voice cracked, and she looked down, like she was ashamed to admit how close to the edge she was. Marcus felt a pain in his chest. He'd read her file. Leela Harper, 20, part-time cashier. No prior experience yet, but it was just data. It didn't mention a sick mother or abandoned dreams. He thought of the boardroom, the endless debates about cutting costs, and realized how little those discussions accounted for people like her. "I'm sorry," he said, and he meant it. "That's heavy." She shrugged, like it was just her reality. "It's life. But then Greg's on me for every little mistake, and the customers are yelling, and I'm trying so hard." Boot to broken bar. She gestured at herself, at the tears she couldn't hide. "This happens." Marcus nodded, his mind already racing with solutions: better training, more staff, maybe even health benefits that actually helped. But those were CEO thoughts, and he was just Mark right now. "Greg's a jerk," he said bluntly, and her eyes widened, a surprised giggle escaping. "No, really, he's got the charm of a moldy sponge. But you're doing better than you think. You're quick, you're polite, and you haven't punched anyone yet. That's a win." She smiled. "A real one this time." "Thanks, that a broken bar means a lot." "Take a few more minutes," he said, standing. "I'll cover the register." "Tell Greg I said it's fine." Her mouth opened, then closed, like she couldn't believe it. "You sure?" "I don't want you in trouble." "I can handle Greg," Marcus said with a grin, already knowing he'd have to smooth things over later. "Just don't tell him I called him a moldy sponge." Leela laughed, and for a moment, the break room felt less oppressive. Marcus left her there, heading to the front, his mind buzzing. He'd come to fix a business, but Leela's story was shifting his perspective. She wasn't just a cashier, she was the reason he needed to get this right. The next week was a grind of stocking, sweeping, dodging Greg's temper. Marcus watched Leela from a distance, noting her quiet resilience. She wasn't perfect as she fumbled scans, miscounted change on Sia, but she was trying harder than anyone. He started helping where he could, giving her extra breaks, restocking her register's candy rack. He told himself it was just part of understanding the store, but her story had burrowed into him. By Friday, he'd started sketching a plan in a hidden notebook: more staff, better training, real benefits. But that afternoon, he overheard Greg in the stockroom, his voice sharp as he griped to another cashier. "Leela's on thin ice," Greg said. "Too slow, too many mistakes, one more, and she's gone." Marcus's blood ran cold. He wanted to confront Greg, but blowing his cover now would ruin everything. Instead, he waited, then found Leela at her register, her smile strained but holding. He decided then, he'd protect her job, no matter what it took. Marcus arrived early the following Monday, his cover intact but his patience fraying. He'd spent the weekend diving into Sonny Mard's financials, confirming what he'd suspected. The store was tanking because of mismanagement, not the workers. Greg's obsession with cutting corners, scheduling skeleton crews, ignoring broken equipment was driving customers away and burning out staff. Marcus's notebook was filling up with fixes: hire more cashiers, upgrade their registers, retrain managers to actually manage. But Leela's words from the break room kept looping in his head: "I can't mess this up." Her desperation, her grit, her quiet fight to keep going, it was a stark reminder of what was at stake. That afternoon, during a slow moment, Marcus found Leela restocking the cigarette case behind the counter. Her hands moved with practiced speed, but her eyes were distant, like she was carrying a weight no one could see. He grabbed a broom and started sweeping nearby, giving himself an excuse to check in. "You holding up?" he asked, keeping his tone light. She glanced over, her guard up but softening when she saw him. "Yeah, I guess. Just trying not to screw up today." "You're doing better than you think," he said, leaning on the broom. "I saw you handle that lady with the expired coupon like a champ." Leela snorted, a faint smile breaking through. "She called me a useless in 3 different ways before she stormed off." "Real champ move." Marcus chuckled, but his chest tightened. She was beating herself up for things that weren't her fault: rude customers, a broken system, a manager who didn't care. He wanted to tell her she was worth more than this, but before he could, she spoke again, her voice quieter. "Can I ask you something, Mark?" She locked the cigarette case, her hands pausing. "You're new, but you don't act like it. You're too a broken bar, calm, too put together." "What's your deal?" Marcus frowns, his grip tightening on the broom. She was sharp, catching the edges of his facade. He forced a laugh, shrugging it off. "Just good at pretending, I guess." Years of practice. She studied him, her eyes narrowing slightly, like she wasn't buying it but didn't have the energy to dig. "Well, whatever your deal is, thanks for being nice. Most people here just keep to themselves." He nodded, searching for words that wouldn't sound hollow. He wanted to tell her she didn't have to fight so hard, that she deserved better than this grind. But before he could, Greg's voice cut through the store, sharp and commanding. "Leela, break room, now." Leela's face went pale, her hands fumbling with the keys. "Oh, God," she whispered. "What now?" Marcus followed at a distance, staying out of sight but close enough to hear. In the break room, Greg stood with his arms crossed, his scowl deep enough to carve lines into his face. Leela stood before him, her shoulders hunched, bracing for impact. "You voided 2 transactions wrong yesterday," Greg snapped, "and you were 3 minutes late clocking in today. You think this is a game?" "No, sir," Leela said, her voice small but steady. "I'm sorry. I'm trying. Trying isn't enough." Greg cut her off. "You're on probation. One more mistake, and you're out. Got it?" Leela nodded, her jaw tight, but Marcus could see the tears welling in her eyes, his fists clenched, anger surging. This wasn't management, it was bullying. Greg stormed out, leaving Leela alone, her breath hitching as she tried to hold it together. Marcus waited until Greg was gone, then stepped into the break room. Leela was staring at the floor, her hand shaking. "Hey," he said softly, "you okay?" She didn't look up. "No," she whispered. "I can't lose this job, Mark. My mama broken bar her meds, the hospital bill's a broken bar, we're barely scraping by. If I get fired a broken bar." Her voice broke, and she pressed a hand to her mouth, trying to stifle a sob. "I was supposed to be a nurse. I was good at it, you know, top of my class. But then she got sick, and I had to drop out, and now I'm here, screwing everything up, and I can't even." Her words hit Marcus like a sledgehammer. He saw it all, the dreams she'd sacrificed, the endless weight of responsibility, the fear that one misstep would ruin everything. He thought of the boardroom, the cold debates about profit margins, and felt a wave of shame. This was what he'd come to fix, and not just the numbers, but the lives caught in their gears. "Leela," he said, his voice firm but kind, "you're not screwing up. You're doing more than most people could, and you're not going to lose this job, I promise." She looked up, her eyes searching his, confused. "You can't promise that. Greg's got it out for me." Marcus took a deep breath, knowing he was about to break his cover. He couldn't stay silent, not now. "Listen to me, I'm not just some assistant manager. My name's Marcus Kane, and I'm the CEO of Kane Enterprises. I own this store, and I'm telling you, you're not going anywhere." Leela's eyes widened, her mouth parting in shock. "What? Broken bar what?" "I'm undercover," he said, keeping his voice low. "I came here to see what's really going on. And what's going on is that people like you are the heart of this place, and people like Greg are the problem. I'm going to fix it, starting with him." She stared at him, disbelief battling with a flicker of hope. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," he said. "And I'm not just keeping your job safe. I want to help you get back to school." "Nursing, right? We've got programs, scholarships, things I can make happen. You're not stuck here, Leela. You're not stuck anywhere." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but they weren't from despair this time. "Why would you do that?" she whispered. "You don't even know me." "Because I've seen what you're carrying," he said. "And because you're the kind of person this company needs, as someone who doesn't give up, even when it's hard. You shouldn't have to fight alone." Leela wiped her eyes, a shaky smile breaking through. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Marcus said. "Just keep showing up. I've got your back." He left the break room, his heart pounding with a mix of adrenaline and resolve. He'd come to Sunny Mart to save a business, but Leela's story had changed the game. She wasn't just a cashier, she was a reminder of why he'd taken this risk. And now, he had work to do. The next morning, Marcus called an emergency meeting with the store's regional director, still maintaining his cover but pulling strings behind the scenes. He laid out Greg's mismanagement and understaffing, poor training, and a toxic attitude that was driving away both employees and customers. By noon, Greg was called to the regional office for a performance review, a move Marcus orchestrated to buy time. He wasn't ready to reveal himself fully, not until he had a concrete plan to overhaul the store. Over the next few days, Marcus worked closely with Leela, subtly mentoring her through the chaos of the front end. He taught her shortcuts on the register, showed her how to handle difficult customers without losing her cool, and made sure Greg's absence gave her breathing room. Leela was a quick learner, her confidence growing with every small victory. But Marcus could still see the strain in her eyes, the constant worry about her mother, the bills, the future. One evening, as they closed the store together, Leela opened up again. "I still can't believe you're the CEO," she said, stacking receipt paper under the counter. Why do all this? You could just sit in some fancy office and let people like Greg run the show. Marcus paused, wiping down the register. Because people like Greg don't see people like you. They see numbers, quotas, problems. I needed to see the real picture, real people like you, who keep this place running despite everything. She looked at him, her expression softening. You're not what I expected a CEO to be. He grinned. Good. I'd hate to be predictable. By the end of the week, Marcus had enough data to make his move. He returned to his CEO role, shedding the denim jacket and name tag, and called a board meeting. He presented a detailed plan, increase staffing budgets, overhaul training, and introduce a benefits package with real healthcare support, including assistance for employees' families. He told Leela's story without naming Hira, describing a cashier who'd sacrificed her dreams to care for her mother, who was fighting to survive in a system that didn't care. The board was skeptical, citing costs, but Marcus was relentless. This isn't just about profit, he said. It's about building something that lasts. People like her are the reason we're still in business. The board approved a pilot program, and Marcus made sure Sunny Mart was the first to implement it. Greg was quietly reassigned to a desk job at headquarters, where he couldn't bully anyone. Leela was promoted to shift lead, with a raise and access to a company scholarship for nursing school. When Marcus told her, she cried again, but this time it was with relief, gratitude, a spark of hope. On his last day at Sunny Mart, Marcus stopped by the break room one more time. Leela was there, sipping coffee, her name tag now reading shift lead. She looked up and smiled, no longer the scared girl he'd found crying. You changed everything, she said. Not just for me, for everyone here. Marcus shook his head. You changed me, Leela. Keep fighting. You're going to be one hell of a nurse. As he walked out of Sunny Mart, the fluorescent lights flickering above, Marcus felt a weight lift. He'd come to save a store, but he'd found something bigger, a purpose. And it all started with a cashier's tears and the truth that shattered his heart.